we want to preserve our constitutional republic, we need an informed and educated citizenry. And that's what this show is all about. Find out what's really happening. It's time to stop the lies and learn the truth. This is The Real Story with your host, Jeanne Ives.
The United States of America is still the greatest nation on earth. But we have states that have fallen into somewhat of a tyranny. We have states and we have leaders over us that fail to enforce the laws that have been duly passed by their representatives and signed into law by their governors. And so it's time for us to have a more impactful conversation, a longer conversation with my Edgar County Watchdogs. You hear them here nearly every single Sunday, and they bring up one situation after another where laws passed are not being actually upheld by those elected to do so. And so I wanted to turn over this time tonight to them to kind of give us a longer sort of podcast form on this radio show of what they've experienced, how they even came into being, and what you can do to help this along and be corruption fighters at the local level as well. So John Kraft, Kirk Allen, thank you so much for joining me here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
So why don't we just start at the beginning and give the radio audience, I know others may know your story, but I don't think that my radio audience really knows your story. So talk about fundamentally, how you began, how you two got together, and what has sort of been your record over the last, I think, 15 years now.
You bet. Thanks again for having us. Really appreciate it. God bless America. Back in 2010, I got an ambulance call as a volunteer. I'm about 5 miles from the ambulance bay, and it was for an 11-day-old baby not breathing. And in the safety, fire and rescue operations, we always live by a motto of risk little to save little, risk a lot to save a lot. Well, 11-day-old baby, I'm driving 100 miles an hour to get to the bay. So I'm putting myself at risk and anybody else that's on the road between me and the ambulance bay. We get to government housing. We had a 16-year-old mother with an 11-day-old baby standing in the doorway. The child was screaming bloody murder. If he's screaming, he's breathing. So that was a huge relief. Not to mention all the other concerns questions that get brought up with a 16-year-old mother in government housing. After we took care of the situation, the child was in a blue nightie under the fluorescent lights. She thought the child was turning blue, and in her mind, having any parental skills, she thought the child was not breathing. So anyway, I called dispatch and I asked who took the call, and the gentleman that was on the phone said I did. And I said, well, could you tell me why we didn't implement over the phone infant CPR? Had they done that, they would have known the child was breathing. And his response was, we don't do that. I've never heard of any dispatcher anywhere in the country that doesn't have a medical protocol to do over-the-phone CPR for both adults and infants. And that took me to my first 911 board meeting where I got lied to. That took me to my first request for a Freedom of Information, set of records. And then on to my county board meeting, where basically I got browbeat for daring to ask a question in a public meeting.
Now, you're the wrong person, Kirk, for this to happen with, right? Because you actually have some expertise in this area.
I'm the local fire chief there.
There you go.
And an responding licensed EMT, and I knew what the rules were, but it was a wake-up call because I found out that our dispatchers hadn't been licensed for 6 years to even dispatch medical calls. And EIU, Eastern Illinois University, did about a 4-minute news segment that's still on YouTube. If you look up Edgar County 911, it's a EIU newscast that they did, and they confirmed everything that I found. And I thought, wow, what a way to get the message out. But my point of complaining about that at the time was if there's a lawsuit on a medical dispatch that goes bad, the taxpayers are going to be on the hook because none of them were licensed. And then I find out that they're lying to me. It's like, okay, we have a bigger problem than I thought. And John and I were at an event, and I'll let John tell his story, but we shared our stories. And that's kind of how we got started. John, you want to fill that in?
Well, thanks for having us, Jeanne. I had a problem with our local school district, and I believe they violated the Open Meetings Act at the only meeting I went to at that school district. And then Kirk and I were at a dinner for our newly elected sheriff and sitting across the table from each other, never saw each other before in our lives. And he was telling me about that, and I was telling him about the school district, and we're just like, well, let's do something about it. We didn't really know what to do about it, but we decided to open up a website and publish what we were finding. And what we were finding just kept growing and growing and growing, and people from outside, we used to high-five each other when we get 20 people read one article. and people
now
from
you get, what, 1 million views a year, 2 million?
Yeah, we were averaging over 1 million a year. But people from outside the county started calling us in different towns, different counties, different schools. The whole ball of wax with any local government in the state, and even out of state, was calling us, so we just couldn't turn them away. So here we are.
Well, before we go to break, just tell the audience, what's your record at this point? How long have you been in operation doing what you do best, which is uncover corruption, expose it, and then at least bring it up to the authorities to get some resolution? That doesn't always happen, but you have a pretty good record. So how many years have you been in, and what's your record?
Well, John and I first met and started writing about stuff in 2010, but the Edgar County Watchdogs, which is a 501c4, we incorporated that in 2013. And through that process, I think as of yesterday's tally, we're at 685 public officials that are no longer in office after either directly from our work or people we've helped expose local officials. So just shy of 700 officials that no longer are in the public sector.
That's amazing. That's better than the AG. They couldn't find white-collar crime to save them. They always depend on the feds to do it instead.
The ironic part is the number of convictions and criminal investigations that have been opened up. I off the top of my head, it's about just over 300 or 325 criminal indictments, and it's nothing more than we identify what they did, gather it, package it up, and hand it to law enforcement to have it investigated, or show people locally how to take it to their law enforcement. And from an indictment standpoint, I think all but 2 of those cases, those that have made it to trial, have actually all been convicted. So the track record's pretty solid. I mean, the laws are simple. They're not political. You either follow them or you don't. They apply to everybody, and that's all that we've ever asked, is everybody needs to follow the same set of rules.
But you guys have a legal background, you're lawyers?
No.
Oh.
No.
We know how to read, though.
And comprehend.
All right. Okay, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Real Story with Jeanne Ives. We've got the Edgar County Watchdogs in studio here for a more comprehensive discussion about corruption in the state of Illinois, and there's plenty of it, and it's at all levels. We'll be right back.
We now return to The Real Story. Here's your host, Jeanne Ives.
Okay, we're back. We're still here in studio with the Edgar County Watchdogs. We're going to be here all night because there's so much to discuss with them. And you may have heard them almost every single weekend on my show, bringing one story up after another. They've been involved in some of the biggest cases to hit the airwaves, including most recently, obviously, the Dalton and Tiffany Henyard stuff that they actually got the ball rolling on way ahead of when the media did. But you know what? Let's just pitch it back to you two. Kind of give us a tutorial here. What are 2 of the biggest laws that you use as a citizen to go in and hold government accountable? What should people know about those?
Well, it's the same with everybody. The Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act. A lot of different states call both of them the Public Records and Public Meetings Act, but it's all the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it's different than the federal Freedom of Information Act. It belongs to each state. Each state has their own. Illinois has the Illinois Freedom of Information Act. For the Open Meetings Act, initially you just need to check and see that agendas are published for any meeting, whether it be a city council meeting, a committee meeting of the city council, or a county board, school board, all of it. Every public body has to publish their agendas at least 48 hours in advance, and they have to tell the public what is going to be discussed and voted on during the meeting. sometimes that's just too difficult for local public bodies to do. It escapes
Sometimes
me why
they
it's
try
too
to
difficult.
sneak in a vote on something that they have not published content about, and I think you've caught them a couple different times doing that, and it's led to them having to reverse course, post it again, take a vote again, and in some cases, I think it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, it's actually led to more public exposure about what they were going to vote on, and then actually them not voting on it at all because of that public exposure.
Right. And some of the most recent are, for instance, every vote has to be made in public. They can't vote in private and then come out and tell everybody what the result. They can't go to closed session to vote and come out and tell everybody what they voted on. And they can't vote by secret ballot during an open meeting and then tally it up and just tell everybody to vote total. The public has a right to know what each and every one of their representatives voted. There were, 2 counties and I think 1 school district so far. I got an email yesterday on the school district that voted for their county board and school board chairman by secret ballot. Hey, write down who you want to be the chairman and hand it in. We'll tally it up and tell everybody.
What?
It doesn't work that way. I mean, that's just one simple example of how anybody in public office should already know you can't do that.
And I think with OMA, one of the most important things people need to do is first and foremost, read the Open Meetings Act, and then read it again, and then read it a third time. Because then you'll learn what is supposed to be going on.
How about they just show up for a public meeting?
Well, that's hugely important. But when they don't know even the basic rules, because they haven't read the act, and a lot of times we know right off the bat that none of the officials have read the Open Meetings Act. So
obviously, if they're doing secret ballots.
Well, let's not forget College of DuPage.
Oh, yeah.
They did secret. Well, hold your hand up as a secret vote in closed session.
That's how they did that. That's how they passed Bruder's illegal contract.
Right. So one of the, they're required to do Open Meetings Act training, and we ask for those certificates. Well, how many times have we had OMA certificates show up that post-date the actual FOIA? They're like, oh, we got to do that? So they go and do it after the request for the record, but now they've been educated. Now they don't have an excuse. So that's when you go to the meeting and say, hey, wait a minute, you can't do that.
And one key point on the certificate, a citizen can take the citizens training on the Attorney General's website for open meetings and Freedom of Information Act. The tests are similar, they're a little bit different, but they're similar. But you'll know just general questions. Can you have a secret ballot? I'm sure that's one of the questions on the training. The answer is no, but it gives you a heads up before if you've never been to a meeting.
If you're Joe Citizen, when it comes to the Open Meetings Act, you should know what it needs. The meeting needs to be posted at a particular place at a particular time. Prior to the meeting needs to be detailed enough so the average citizen understands what is actually being voted on. You can't have just contract.
Right.
You have to have more specific information than that. What else do they need to know about it?
Well, on the posting requirement, one of the things we see all the time, it's supposed to be readily available for 48 hours. Well, readily available means you can see it on a window or on a door, not on a bulletin board that's halfway down a hallway in a locked, building that you can't see every 48 hours. You have to be able to access that. If they have a website, it's supposed to be on their website if they have a full-time employee that manages their website. If they don't have a full-time employee, then it's no requirement to be on the website. And ironically, that provision in the law, we have seen counties strike out of employees' duties management of website because they're full-time employees. But if part of their duties are website, they have to post it. So they get rid of that on their duties, so then they don't have to post. No, Effingham County did that.
Effingham County.
Yeah. Now
Effingham County, where they have the big white cross at the intersection of 6.
Now the current board, there's been a good change down there. The current board seems to be doing a lot of great things. But the prior board, they eliminated that from the duties. So they no longer had to post it because they got caught having meetings without posting it. And instead of just admitting, hey, we screwed up.
What are the rules for an emergency meeting?
Yeah, I was going to cover that. And there's different rules for special meetings and emergency
Oh,
meetings.
good grief.
A special meeting, they can only discuss what is specifically listed on the agenda. They can't have a special meeting for, payroll issues and then talk about a contract. Wrong answer. Only what's on the agenda. Emergency meetings have to be a legitimate, bona fide emergency that is not the fault of the public body. So when we cover, and
A flood happens.
we've
and
done
we
articles
need
like
to-
on this before.
Yeah.
So if they forget to pay their insurance and put it out for bid, that is not an emergency.
Right.
And they can't have an emergency meeting to buy insurance because they failed to properly put it out for bid.
And back on the point of a special meeting, the board is the one that's bound to only discussing what's on the agenda. The public can bring up anything they want in that meeting.
Okay, and that's the other important thing about an open meeting. Public comment must be listed on the agenda and allowed. No.
It doesn't have to be listed. They just
must
have
be
to
allowed.
provide a time for the public to comment.
Okay.
Right. And there's another provision in the county code. It's also in the school code. It's separate from the Open Meetings Act, and it says that the school and or the county is to provide sufficient time for citizens and employees to ask questions during a meeting. Well, that provision, ask questions. What's the legislative intent of asking a question?
I would say you should get an answer back.
Right.
No?
Because, you want an answer. That's the intent.
Yeah.
But we see schools.
No, we just want to ask questions because we like to.
Right. Well, we see schools and public bodies take the position Open Meetings Act doesn't require us to answer. And I agree with them. It doesn't. It just says you have a right to speak. But if I'm at a school and I'm asking a question, I bring up that point. And we did that in Mattoon, where Dale Ryder's currently the school board president.
Don't get me started.
For the first time in 20-some years, they got answers to questions that night because we invoked that principle. And I asked Dale directly, tell me what the legislative intent is that. You've been a senator. Does that not mean we have a right to get an
He was
answer?
the only senator who agreed to increase our income taxes permanently 32%. Hey, okay, we have to take another break here. Sorry. And we're going to be right back with Edgar County Watchdogs to continue this conversation. We'll move from OMA into the FOIA law. And boy, has that been valuable to your work. This is Jeanne Ives. You're listening to The Real Story on AM 560, Chicago.
The Real Story with Jeanne Ives continues on AM 560. The Answer.
Well, welcome back. Thanks for joining me on this holiday weekend. Happy 4th of July, you American patriots, keeping things going. We're still here with Edgar County Watchdogs. We're having a special, sort of lengthier conversation with them to talk about their work and actually inform our people so they can be watchdogs in their own community. Look, they cannot do everything. I know they have a great track record, and I know they get a lot of tips from around the entire state, probably even some from out of state. But listen, there's just these two guys doing everything they can to fight corruption in this state. They find it at every level. They attack it at every level. And they've been involved in big, big cases. I just recently went downtown with them for the Tiffany Henyard hearing because they sued her. I want to get an update on that, but not yet. Anyway, we were just finishing up our conversation about the Open Meetings Act. Do you think, was there something more to add before we move on?
Well, one short issue is we talked shortly about public comment, and they have to provide it at every public meeting. They also have to have an established public comment policy. A lot of public bodies we find decide on their own to divert from their policy because, people talk about things they don't want to listen to. Or they try to tell you have to address the board as a whole. You can't mention anybody's names. School boards are good at that. No, you can mention anybody by name during public comment.
Okay, so if they write that into their public comment rules, you can just say that's not accurate.
Yeah, when I find a school board that has that in their public comment rules, I'll get me a cheat sheet and list the names of all the board members.
Would that be like the university,
and say something about each one of them?
like the University of Illinois?
Like your dress is ugly?
Yeah, share that one.
Oh, yeah.
And the University of Illinois is an example that they want you to sign up for public comment at least 3 business days before the meeting. Well, the agenda is not required to be published until 2 business days before the meeting.
Wait a minute. The University of Illinois, right, where all the smart people reside, where they have like PhD upon PhD.
A law school? They have a law school.
I think they have a law school. Yeah, I think that they're the premier educational institution in the entire state.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they deny, or they wanted you to disclose what you're going to talk about in advance to get permission?
Yeah, and that's another.
Do you guys get an honorary PhD at the end of this? Should you be traipsing across the line?
But you read this stuff, and we've talked about going to the U of I to their meetings to bust it out. There's just so many meetings to go to, but it's so ridiculous.
But you should. Invite me down. I will come down there. I will watch that.
The first issue is you shouldn't need to try to get permission, especially based on the subject of what you're going to talk about.
No.
You should just sign up, say, I want to speak at public comment at this meeting right here. If there's an open slot available, they should first come, first serve on assigning, the number of people that they're going to allow,
Well, they play that game, too. Like, they'll shuffle the pages.
Right.
We only have room for 30 minutes of public comment. The rest of you can go sit down. This happened during COVID all the time.
All the trouble that we were exposing at Call of Duty page, I had to hand them that. They would allow public comment as long as there were people waiting in line to stand up.
They did do that.
It didn't matter. Well, it was 3.5 hours at least one night.
However, they did initially try to say you had to list what agenda item you're going to speak to. So the agenda item we listed was public comment.
Yeah. So, if the public body wants to play games, you can be creative and play games back with them. But they have to have an established policy, and they have to follow that policy, period. If the policy allows 10 minutes per person, and the chairman says, well, we're going to only allow 5 minutes this time, wrong answer. Yeah, they have to allow the full 10 minutes.
Can they change it ahead of the meeing?
They can if they adopt a new policy.
Only if they adopt a new policy. I think that's really important because you'll get, you saw Naperville 203. You saw the Deerfield stuff happening with all, the trans issues going on. And parents were rightfully angry. They show up at their school board meeting and they all get their 3 minutes. But a lot of times you'll walk in there and they're like, oh, no, it's only 2 minutes tonight. And they cannot do that without adopting a new policy.
Correct. Okay. And the adoption of the policy has to be on the agenda.
And it has to be passed.
Can't vote on anything that's not on the agenda.
And we bring that up no matter if we dislike 100% of what somebody's saying. I'm still going to bring up that they're violating that person's right to speak through the amount of time listed on the agenda.
Okay, we're going to pause. Short break here. We'll be right back. This is The Real Story with Jeanne Ives. I got Kirk and John in studio.
Now, more of The Real Story with your host, Jeanne Ives.
Okay, we're back with the Edgar County Watchdogs, and I promise we will move on from Open Meeting Act. But I think that's one more important thing to say, because a lot of times you'll have a sign-in sheet, and they can have a sign-in sheet, and they can ask you to put your name on there. But they cannot ask any other identifying information, for example, your address, and it doesn't matter whether or not you live in that particular district.
Or even in the state.
State.
I'll play devil's advocate on that to a degree, because this is the game they play. Well, we can ask anything we want. And they can ask. The people need to know their rights. They're not required to provide their private information. A home address is private information. The AG has ruled. They can ask all day long. And if you put it on the sheet, you have volunteered your information. Just like when they say, we're throwing you out of a meeting, don't volunteer to get up and walk out, because a lot of times they don't like what you're saying and they tell you to leave. Well, if you voluntarily leave, you just gave up your rights to take any action against them. Hold them accountable to the statutes.
But don't start fighting them when they...
No, absolutely not.
You got if a police officer comes up and grabs you by the arm and escorts you out, go with them. You can't fight them, because then you'll be arrested for, fighting a police officer. And they can't... You don't have to show an ID to go to a meeting either. The Illinois Tollway Authority remodeled their entire building because I filed a complaint that they held their meetings inside the secure area and requiring people to show their ID. And that was several years ago. But
Great job.
The chairman knew that they were wrong, and I never went to one of those meetings. Somebody else complained to us that they were being subjected to ID checks just to go to a meeting.
Show me your papers.
And that's wrong. You don't have to, and you don't have to list your name or your address, anything. No ID, nothing.
Right.
Well, I got to be honest with you. I went to a Wheaton City Council meeting over a sidewalk issue in my neighborhood. I was trying to help out a guy who was getting this bogus sidewalk put in on a cul-de-sac that goes to nowhere. I said, this is a total waste of money. Plus, you're right up next to his door. Anyways, it was a very local niche issue. But, you know, my neighbor came to me and said, Jeannie, can you help speak up at this meeting? I'm like, absolutely. So I went up there and I spoke up, and I was on Wheaton City Council. And everybody really does know me. I mean, they do. And most people know where I live. But I was not going to announce my address in public at a meeting. I mean, you know, a lot of the weirdos will show up.
Right.
At your door. I wasn't going to do it. You don't have to do it. Okay, moving on. Let's move on to FOIA, which is another one of like the major laws that you use to your advantage. And actually, people should use it to their advantage to keep track of what is happening at their.
Yeah, one of the first and foremost things I always ask for is a copy of their training certificates. You know, the Attorney General the law outlines they've got 90 days to comply from the time they take office.
This is elected officials have to have training.
Right. Anyone holding on, you know, a trustee on a board, whether they're elected or appointed. And the reason I ask for the certificates, it's going to tell me whether or not they even know the rules. If they give me certificates, even if they're post-dated after the FOIA, which is very common, now they don't have an excuse because they've done the training.
Point.
So when they try to say, well, we didn't know or we didn't realize, well, you've got a certificate. If you don't have a certificate, now you've been educated, you have to have one. From that point on, you'll find out real quick whether they're playing games or whether they're transparent. We have seen just about every trick in the book you can imagine that public bodies try to hide records from us. What was the one here recently? The newspaper guy contacts us over a settlement.
That was Hinsdale Township High School District.
Okay, so Hinsdale 86.
Yeah, they had on their agenda.
Fast one on you.
Yeah, they had on their agenda to approve two settlements with two different students, you know, out of district settlements. David Giuliani asked for copies of the settlements, and they said no.
He's a reporter who writes for Patch, David Giuliani. He's pretty well known in this area, especially the eastern part of DuPage County.
Great reporter.
He dropped me a note, and I said, hey, I'll get them copies for you. And I sent a FOIA, and bam, they provided them to me. And
so you sent a FOIA, John Kraft, Edgar County Watchdogs, and that's all the school district needed to read, and they gave you the information. But they would not give it the same information to the Patch.
Not until our FOIA request, then they gave it to him.
And that happens quite frequently.
That's complete bull, you know what.
Right. Oh, it is. It's but that happens all the time. I can't tell you the number of FOIAs we do that have nothing to do with our direct work. It's doing it on behalf of someone else. The whole Dominion garbage that happened in DuPage County.
Yes.
The gal that contacted me, and in fact, I think you sent her to us, if I recall.
I did. I do tend to.
I took her FOIA request and submitted it in my name.
The exact FOIA request.
Exact. To the letter. I mean, cut and paste. I got all the records, but they denied her all the records.
That's crap.
That's what DuPage.
That's why the Democrats need to get rid of Kaczmarek. We need to get rid of Kaczmarek and all the Democrats because these guys are playing with you, DuPage County listeners.
Well, when we can get records so easy, but citizens can't, it's a huge problem. And the reason we get them typically, they know that we won't play the games. We know what the rules are. And we're just going to turn it over to the attorneys to go after them legally to get the records.
Right. Okay, we're going to take another short break because turning it over to the attorneys also means that those attorneys get attorney's fees, and that's really, really where the power comes. Okay, we'll be right back. You're listening to The Real Story with Jeanne Ives.
We now return to The Real Story. Here's your host, Jeanne Ives.
Welcome back. A very exciting show, in my opinion. We're talking about FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, but you wouldn't believe how powerful this law is. And it's punishing, too. It's punishing to the people in elected offices, the actual government agencies who refuse to comply with FOIA. It's going to cost them a pretty penny. And we're going to pick up the conversation right there. That is the cudgel when it comes to FOIA. OMA doesn't have the same sort of power, but FOIA does. Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, the fee provision in FOIA, it's a shall pay, you know, if you're the prevailing party. And this one's really comical because we hear all the time that, oh, the watchdogs, they make all their money suing government.
You make no money.
We don't make any money at it because there's no fee provision that comes to us. The lawyers get paid. But we don't make any money through any of these lawsuits unless there's a civil penalty, which I don't think we've ever got a civil penalty, have we?
I don't think we have.
There is a provision for that, but we've never received one.
I think we're going to get civil penalties against Dalton.
That'll be
that
great.
one probably will, which even that is $2,500 to $5,000, I think, is the max on that. But the lawyers, we've seen lawyers make big dollars, on lawsuits, and it's so crazy. Just give us the records. Why would you fight it? Well, we typically find out why they want to fight it when we get the records.
So I can't remember, but I know one of the particular state agencies that likes to deny FOIAs is the Illinois State Police.
Oh, they're notorious for it.
And notorious, right? And they have paid out, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees?
Over $250,000 in FOIA lawsuits.
In
Not
FOIA
just our
lawsuits.
That's across the board, not just ours, but across the board.
Across the board. So
Right.
that's.
And speaking of FOIAs, you may recall we talked about several shows ago the Department of Corrections and what's going on down there at the jail. They have yet to answer the Attorney General's request for, an answer to my complaint, because they're not giving us all of the bids and, the stuff related to those contracts and all the change orders.
Right.
Well, we know there's stink there because we can smell it from the studio.
Well, we know that there's stink there, too, because I have an insider who told me there's crap going on there. So I put you guys on the case.
Absolutely. And what's ironic is the AG says, well, we haven't pushed them yet because we could make a determination now that they violated FOIA, but that doesn't get you the records. And I responded, you're absolutely right. Maybe now's a good time for the AG to exercise your subpoena power, because they have subpoena power to get the records. But they've never, that we've identified, they have never used their subpoena
what
power.
They're hiding here is a big, fat mess that J.B. Pritzker, he's redoing Stateville, and it is one bad contract after another, and they will not come clean on how much it's costing.
Correct.
For a lot of this upgrade. So when you find that they won't respond to a simple FOIA on, give us the contracts.
I wanted change orders.
Right. Yeah. If they won't respond to something as simple as that, then guess what? There's a lot more crap going on down there.
Right.
Yeah. So anytime there's smoke, there's a real fire.
And FOIA is pretty much the same as OMA. Mm-hmm. My suggestion to people is read the statute, read it again, and read it a third time. Learn what your rights are. Learn what their duties are. That way, when you walk into that room to address that public body during public comment, you know what your rights are, and they can't pull the wool over your eyes.
And people should use it, liberally. I mean, it's about the only thing I'm going to ask you to do liberally, but yeah, they should definitely use that liberally. And I will say this, you were very helpful to me because I was making some FOIA requests, and you have a standard format that you use, and I just take that and I just clean it up every time and use the standard format because it's got all the language in there that tells you, look, I'm not a habitual requester. This is not for a business purpose. I'm not, or commercial production or anything like that.
Right. And there's some key documents that we always ask for. I think John can give a broad breakdown on that.
Well, before we get there, can you tell the Tiffany Henyard FOIA story? We have about 3 minutes left in this segment.
The Tiffany Henyard, which story?
The FOIA story that you found her in court about a month ago.
This is proof. She was waving that paper.
Holding up a paper. These are the receipts. This is the email that said the trustees canceled the credit card. So
she's getting slammed by her trustees for credit card receipts. And she tries to turn the tables on them and say that they canceled the very credit cards for which they want receipts for. So she's at a public meeting. She holds up a piece of paper and says, I have the receipts. I have the proof that they asked to cancel the credit cards. And all you did 18 months ago was FOIA that piece of paper she was waving around.
She referenced the paper she was holding up.
She referenced it. And you asked for a copy of that. And
yes.
It's been almost 18 months now, and you went through a whole FOIA process with her, and she got put into court. Then she was found in contempt of court because she wouldn't produce it. Then she was back into court and back into court again, and finally she was told she had to come up with some document as to why she can't produce the record.
Her affidavit was found to be insufficient.
And then she provided the affidavit. It was insufficient. Now we got, I think, till
July something. I don't remember the next hearing date.
But meanwhile, she's racking up how much of a fine every single day that she does.
$1,000 a day.
$1,000 a day for every day that she doesn't come up with a qualified affidavit as to why she doesn't have this paper that she said she had.
Right.
It was an official paper.
Now, that $1,000 is payable to the courts.
Yes. Okay. Because she's in
not
contempt.
to us.
She's in
not paying
contempt
us
of court.
$1,000 a day.
Yeah, it's because she's in contempt of court at this point.
Right.
Okay. And then will there also be FOIA fees that Dalton will pay for not responding to the FOIA that your attorney will receive?
They will pay our attorney fees. And since she's already been found in contempt of court, there'll probably be civil penalties on top of that.
For willful and deliberate avoidance of FOIA. The Dalton attorney, and I forget who the other person was there for Dalton, they pretty well admitted
Yes.
that they've done everything they can, and the former mayor's not cooperating, and they did violate FOIA. I don't think there's any argument they're acknowledging that. So they're definitely going to have to pay the attorney fees. Now it's just going to be a question whether they find a civil penalty or
this
not.
conversation we're having is not just important for as citizens to know. It's actually more important, I would say. Honestly, I think it's more important for elected officials to know.
Absolutely.
They should listen to this conversation.
Because it's a taxpayer money that's paying for all these legal fees.
Yep. All right. We've got a hard break, and then we'll be right back with more of the Edgar County Watchdogs after this. You're listening to The Real Story with Jeanne Ives. This is AM 560 WIND, Chicago.
The Real Story with Jeanne Ives continues on AM 560. The Answer.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining me on this holiday weekend. Maybe you're just driving back from the family picnic or the family party and you're listening in. And so we welcome you as a new listener or an old listener. This is my time where I share a lot of different stories from around the state of Illinois. We deal with everything. There's not a single topic of public policy that we are not interested in. We're interested in all of it. But tonight we have a special program going on. We are doing an extended podcast/radio show with the Edgar County Watchdogs. They've been in operation for well over a decade, and they are the biggest corruption fighters in the state of Illinois. They're better than the Attorney General. They're just as good as the federal attorneys as well. Of course, you can't depend on any of the state's attorneys. They really don't do anything. So we depend on the Edgar County Watchdogs to help us hold our government accountable. And so we had just ended the conversation sort of with FOIA, but we were still discussing that a little bit more. One of the questions, though, is where do you start? I mean, you guys get tips in through your tip line, and you kind of figure out that there might be there's some smoke going on and there might be a fire underneath. So what's your first thing that you would FOIA if you felt like there was something amiss?
Well, if it dealt with finances, we would initially FOIA credit card statements.
Okay, because those are pretty revealing.
Yeah, generally from, October through February, so you can get the holiday season. So people like to...
So this has a pattern to it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes for school districts, you include the summertime when the teachers and staff are on generally not working and they're still using a credit card. And one thing that has come up more than once, and I'll use Oakland Fire Protection District as an example. I requested credit card statements for 2 or 3 or 4 years. They answered my FOIA request, and they essentially told on themselves. They answered my FOIA request and also attached a resignation letter from each of the trustees.
You're kidding me.
Oh, that was part of their
And then we find out.
So part of their response was resignation letters because they knew what they did was wrong?
Yeah, the board resigned, all of them, all 3 of them. And then during a police interview, one of them turned himself into the police, said, I want to come and confess because, the watchdog sent a FOIA request and I know I've been caught. Okay,
2 reasons here, though. They knew that they were caught because it was you. Let's just put it that way. And they also fully then knew what was on those credit card statements and that it was improper.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that's fine if they want to.
And did you just I don't mean to go too back far, but did you get a tip on Oakland Fire Protection District?
It's like,
because that's also right in your backyard.
Similar to what Tiffany Hender's doing in Dalton. They would not give the public or employees copies of any credit card or financial statements, and they would just say none of your business.
Okay, so somebody else had tried to FOIA it. They wouldn't give it to them, but when you guys FOIA'd it, you got it.
Their own chief of the department couldn't get answers to questions. And I found out this 2 days ago, he basically got browbeat by one of these trustees that's now convicted. Stop applying for grants. Well, that's because you have to provide financial statements. And
you're kidding.
I kid you not. And he acknowledged in the police report during his interview,
who's he? Who is
Kylie Willison.
Okay, so Kylie Willison is the center of all of this. He was the
trustee for the Fire Protection District, along with his father and along with his wife.
So he was just a trustee. He wasn't the supervisor or the chief or anything like that. No,
he was just one of 3 elected trustees.
But he had access to the Fire Protection District's credit card.
Full access.
As just a trustee, not even the head, not the purchasing agent. Not an employee, just a trustee. He had full access. Well, that's wrong to begin with. I mean, that's stupid.
That's an understatement. But now that he's been convicted, we got more records. Because his initial FOIA, he gave us all the records we asked for, except the credit card statements. And in the police interview, he admitted to destroying them. Well, if you destroyed them, that's a crime. It's a felony under the Downstate Local Records Act.
You know what? Dr. Bruder got away with it, too.
Right. Well, this guy got away with it because the initial complaint to be investigated was abuse of the credit card. Never mind all the other crimes that percolated during these interviews. It's unbelievable to see the other stuff that took place. But anyway, this guy literally lived off the credit card at the taxpayer's expense for years. Today we posted an article with the granite countertops in his kitchen. Those the taxpayers of the fire district paid for. He and his father used to run a hemp farm. There's purchases for agricultural equipment in the thousands paid for on the credit card. They ran the golf course in town. And
so he's literally admitted to this, so he's in jail then? After stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars?
We don't send people to jail in Illinois. What are you thinking? No, he got no jail time. Jail time was stayed. Actually, he got 4 years probation.
That's not enough. He needs it.
He did get restitution. And as I'm going through these records that we got from the state's attorney's FOIA, that was a month to get. Got 5 days to respond to FOIA.
The state's attorney took you a month?
A month later,
For the state's attorney, does he not know the law either?
I sent an email to him.
What the hell's wrong with these people?
Hey, are you guys going to answer my FOIA? And then a few days later, I started getting trickling, a few emails at a time. And
what, that just got bogged down in all the email that they happen to get for FOIA requests in Coles County? Are you kidding me?
Who knows? But when I've got those records, oh my gosh, what a treasure trove of information that the public doesn't know yet. So we've been running a series of exposing all these other malfeasance.
Your website is?
EdgarCountyWatchdogs.com or IllinoisLeaks.com.
Okay, listeners, you can read all these stories, and I think this is a really important story to read beginning to end because it encompasses so much of the corruption that you see elsewhere in the state of Illinois that people are getting away with.
Oh, it's an understatement. I mean, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. And
this is a small community. I mean, Oakland is less than 800 population.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be City of Chicago. It doesn't have to be Michael Madigan doing his bribery scheme with, a multi-billion-dollar company like ComEd. It happens at your local level, too, and you're getting screwed.
Absolutely.
Well, there's a fire chief over in the Rockford area that's being charged with at least a dozen felonies for stealing money from the fire district.
Something like $800,000 or $900,000, if I remember correctly.
We've been watching that case, and we'll write about it when it's finished, but, it's just ridiculous. If we have time, I can tell you another issue with credit card stakes.
Well, let's just take a short little break right now, and then we have plenty of time to talk about the credit card statements. We'll be right back. This is Jeanne Ives. You're listening to The Real Story, and I've got John and Kirk here, the Edgar County Watchdogs.
You're listening to The Real Story with your host, Jeanne Ives.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for joining me on this holiday weekend. So we were right in the middle of a discussion about one of the first things that the Edgar County Watchdogs like to do is to FOIA credit card receipts. And they're very telling. And so, John, you want to go into that a little bit more in detail. I think you had a couple stories.
Yeah, it's just another example of why you look at credit card statements.
Okay.
Several years ago, we looked at, Fosterburg Water District. It's down there in, I think, Macoupin County or...
I think that's Jersey, isn't it? Jersey County?
Jersey County, yeah, okay.
Okay, that would be right just above Madison County. So that's just like that's St. Louis area, right on the border between Illinois and Missouri.
Yep.
So we were looking at the end of them, and I requested credit card statements for a certain time period. And when they came back, I noticed that the trustees went on a junket to St. Louis during Super Bowl weekend.
No, they had a meeting during Super Bowl weekend.
I got the credit card statements. And I think we wrote an article about it. And then I get a phone call from a police officer. He says, "Hey, you can really find out what they did at that hotel if you go to the hotel's website. And since you have the last four of the credit card number in your FOIA response and the dates, you can print up the receipts." Like, really? So I did that. I went to, and for all the rooms, I got the receipts and everything.
So now we know more than they think we know.
So
oh my gosh.
So all the trustees went to the hotel for Super Bowl weekend. They rented a separate room for a party room. They catered in
on the taxpayers' dime.
They catered in smokehouse food, tons of alcohol, and food for the entire weekend was all catered in. And when I initially asked them, "Why did you go to St. Louis?" Well, we had one of those off-site meetings. They call them
retreat.
Then we had
a board retreat.
It was a board retreat.
Yeah.
I said, "Really? Do you have an agenda for that?" Because a majority of a board meeting to discuss public business has to have an agenda. And oh, by the way, you can't have a retreat or any public meeting not within the boundaries of your little public body. They couldn't go to St. Louis to have a meeting. They didn't have an agenda. They didn't have meeting minutes. And
somebody is crapping their pants when you're on the other side of the phone.
They did. They got caught red-handed.
So they were caught red-handed, but nobody had to pay anything back, and nobody went to jail.
Wait a minute. Nobody paid anything back?
No.
Nobody paid anything back?
No.
It would require a state's attorney to actually take action.
So a state's attorney didn't prosecute that white-collar crime?
No.
Because state's attorneys in this state don't ever prosecute white-collar crime.
They don't upset their local apple cart.
Some of them do.
Well, I can think of one.
Were they all? These guys were probably, I know you guys don't care about political party, and I don't care. I find more corruption on the Democrat side, just honestly. But I'm betting these guys in Jersey County, they're all Republican.
I don't know.
You don't know? You didn't even check?
Couldn't tell you.
Okay.
But, they got caught.
And they didn't pay it back, and the taxpayers didn't demand they paid it back. How about the police officer that gave you the tip? He didn't send that information to anybody else?
I think he might have been related to somebody that was an employee there at the time, which is why we got the tip. The public did force a referendum to make those the commissioners elected rather than appointed to the water district. That did pass, and that was a result of what we looked at and published. Not only that, but one of their... Did
they get elected then?
Some of them did, some of them didn't.
Oh, gosh.
But one of the commissioners also...
Voters, wake up,
also
voters.
Had a vehicle maintenance shop where all the water district vehicles went to his shop. And you can't do that either.
Why not? Our former sheriff in Edgar County used to do that.
Yes.
I mean, our 911 director had a flat tire every month, and her husband's garage fixed it every month.
Yeah.
How about that?
So,
how many flat tires have you had in your whole life?
So public records will force public officials to tell on themselves. And
that's a good way to put it.
And that's what happens.
But if nobody is actually... You know what's shocking? There wasn't one honest trustee in that whole bunch.
It's sad. But
and
it's
you
everywhere.
had to get a tip from somebody in order to really get to the details of it. And it wasn't because anybody spoke up at a public meeting or did the FOIA themselves. So people, especially in these smaller towns where everything is, I want to get invited to the garden party, so I'm not going to be the skunk.
And a lot of times it's a board member that actually tips us off, but they're not about to say something in a public meeting or disclose they're the ones that ask us to come in and look at something.
Well, that's wrong too, though. People lack courage.
I agree totally. It's wrong, but you would be shocked how many times the tip came directly from the public body official.
I do know that. I mean, I do understand that there are a lot of good public employees who do not like the corruption, who want to see changes made, and they know what's going on, and they do expose it. I mean, I've had that happen with me. That's how actually COD blew up.
Yep.
Is Kathy Hamilton came to me and said, "This is what's going on. What should I do?" I said, "Well, you're either going to be part of the solution or you're going to be part of the problem.
Right.
You need to publicize this." And she did.
That case, what I really love about what happened at COD is that's an example of one person can make a difference. Mm-hmm. She stood up and spoke, sought help, and it got exposed. You can make a difference. We have an attitude where a lot of people say, well, what good's it do? Nobody's going to do anything. Well, we understand that, but the stuff that's going on with Oakland, when we got those credit card statements and we started seeing what was being spent, it led, the rabbit hole, we're just starting to go down. All of the unbelievable expenditures. The public only knows right now that, hey, he's got to pay $236,000 back. They didn't know that he spent it on all of his other private, junkets to Orlando for his family, and Denver and North Carolina to Myrtle Beach, and his hemp farm and his golf course. They don't know all that stuff. So we're going to expose it. All that came out through the credit card statements. Okay,
so the way that you expose your work is you expose it on your website, and
Correct.
then you post it on Facebook typically. I don't know that you have an active X account, do you?
Yes, we do.
Oh, you do? Okay. And so people can follow you on X, they can follow you on Facebook, they can share these stories so that there's a broader understanding of the level of corruption. Plus, if you read the stories, you learn something about how you can hold your own government accountable and get involved. Because we need watchdogs literally for every single unit of government. And there's, 7,000 of them in the state of Illinois, and people are overwhelmed. I get it. And you got 20 lines on your property taxes that are sucking up your money. And it's really, really hard to get to a meeting, at 7 p.m. when you've got kids to feed and homework to do. I understand it. That's why everybody just has to do their part. But we shouldn't have to do this, which is part of my problem. Part of my problem is that you didn't have one single trustee say no, not at Oakland Fire Protection District, not at the water district that you just talked about, not on your school boards when you've got the trans people dancing around. You don't have a single person on these boards that have the courage to stand up and say no publicly. No, out them yourself.
Right.
You shouldn't have to have watchdogs.
Well, and I'll default back to what Ben Franklin said when he was asked, what kind of government did you give us? And he said, a republic, if you can keep it. How many people, and this is a great question for your callers one night, how many people can say they've been to a civics class in any of their education, grade 1 through college, that taught us how to keep a constitutional republic? We aren't teaching that. What we're doing as watchdogs, we're trying to, instill this is what you need to do to keep your local government held accountable. This is a stepping stone. You look at a bigger scale. If you take it to Washington, it's the same principle. Hold them accountable. Find out what the law is, and are they following it, yes or no? Mm-hmm. And when you start writing about it, which our press used to be the ones that would hold the people accountable and expose this stuff, now they, for the most part, they become ideologues. We focus, when you talked about politics earlier, we focus on what's the law. Liberty, that whole concept, right. Justice is blind. If it says X, Y, Z, that means it applies to you no matter what party you're in. We could care less what party you're in, but we want accountability.
Just to dovetail off of that a little bit, you speak about the media. The media is supposed to be the fourth estate. The media is supposed to be reporting on what is happening politically, on everything. And oftentimes I get it. I mean, there's a lot of stories to report on.
You bet.
Okay. I mean, I understand that. And everybody has their particular expertise. What probably bothers me more is the fact that you will have been reporting on a story for months, maybe even over a year, maybe 2 years. And finally, the media will say, oh, this is a big enough story. We're going to finally cover it. And then finally, people get all upset.
Right.
I mean, that happened initially with College of DuPage. You all started that reporting, started digging into FOIA. And then two of the Chicago Tribune writers win an award for essentially duplicating your FOIA work that they had already read about and then writing about it for a bigger paper. I mean, I know you don't care about the credit. I do, actually, because I don't want those people should have been all over this from the beginning. They weren't. And then you had the same thing happen with the Tiffany Henyard. I mean, you wrote that story 3 years before anybody else was really writing about it.
August of 21 was the first story on
right, and the media, the regular media, didn't start to cover until like 2024.
Same thing happened with Super Dogs.
Right, at Lincoln Way, District 210.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing. And one of those reporters, the Southtown Tribune or whatever they called it, actually put in print. They were the first to cover. And we're all looking at each other going, you got to be kidding me. We've been covering this for 9 months.
I covered that with you way back in the day.
I know.
I met with the people that were exposing all that.
Well, we teach this in our classes and our seminars. You need to establish a relationship with your local media, your reporters, whether it be TV, radio, we don't care. And it's called forced media because there comes a time when you've exposed enough, they can't ignore it anymore. They have to cover it. And that's our goal. Give it so much exposure that people will finally say, why aren't you covering this? And that's what happened in Dalton. I mean, when they finally jumped on, oh my gosh. I mean, we've seen stuff come out of Australia and the United Kingdom where they're talking about Dalton. I mean, how ironic.
Well, now they're hoping that the Pope can shine up their reputation again and they make money off of it too. Maybe they can pay their FOIA legal bill because of the added tourism from the Pope being from Dalton, Illinois.
Well, it's sad that the taxpayers have to cover that. Now, I know folks, will blame us for it. Sorry, folks. There's a law and there's accountability, and if we don't hold them accountable, this will get worse than it already is.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're up against a hard break again, and you're listening to the Edgar County Watchdogs, and we're here on this holiday night. We've got still a lot more to cover on these topics. Their stories, if you haven't had enough of their stories yet, I mean, they could tell stories all night long. And when we get back, we're going to tell some more. Corruption in the state of Illinois is prolific. That's why Illinois is considered, by its own accounts, the third most corrupt state, and city of Chicago, the most corrupt city in the entire country. We'll be right back. This is Jeanne Ives, The Real Story.
We now return to The Real Story. Here's your host, Jeanne Ives.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining me tonight. This is The Real Story with Jeanne Ives, and in studio with me is Kirk Allen and John Kraft, the Edgar County Watchdogs. And we've been having a great conversation all night about something that's really, really important, and it's about how to hold your government accountable. And as I said before, I think the conversation that we've had tonight is probably more important for elected officials than it is even for citizens. But elected officials are going to do whatever they do, and a lot of them have not exhibited the courage to do things the way they should be done. They have not read the law. They cover for each other all the time. And so you citizens need to hold them accountable. The two biggest tools that they use in their toolbox are the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act. And as we were talking, Kirk, we were saying that, a lot of times you find out a lot about a public body based on their credit card statements. But it also seems to me, because I've been following your work for as long as we've known each other. We worked on the College of DuPage stuff to begin with. I tipped you off about what was happening at Northern Illinois University. You went to that. I mean, we've been friends for a long time. We've been looking at this stuff. But it does seem to me that every time you start one place, you're going down a rabbit hole to another place. And so,
you're right. But what we've learned, I didn't realize it, but rabbit hole is just a single hole. I've now, coined the term, we're going down the rat's nest, because rats don't just have one hole. They burrow tunnels all over the place. And these public bodies have more tunnels of corruption than I ever imagined. and we're back to Oakland, that little town of 800 people. When we got the records, now they investigated credit card fraud. Mm-hmm. Now, if you get pulled over for DUI and there's a bag of cocaine in the right-hand seat, you're going to get arrested for the cocaine too. But we got told, well, I'm looking at all these records and all these interviews, police interviews, and the number of crimes that have been admitted to in the videos and on the records never got investigated. And the officer tells me, well, the only complaint we had was credit card fraud, so we didn't investigate anything else.
But it's glaring right in front of them like any idiot could figure it out?
They provided me all the line of credit loan documents. They talk about in the police report one loan document for $30,000. They took out a loan for $30,000 in 2018.
Kylie Wilson, a simple trustee on the Oakland Fire Protection District, not only used the credit card improperly for personal expenses, he took out a line of credit loan.
Yes, for $30,000 in 2018, and
Himself.
all three trustees signed it.
All three trustees. So
Correct.
they knew he was taking out a $30,000 line of credit.
Correct.
What was it for?
Well, we can't get any records for what it was for.
Oh.
But it didn't get investigated because that wasn't part of the original complaint.
Did they buy a new fire truck?
Well,
is there anything there? Did they upgrade something?
Here's the rat hole.
What?
It was $235,000.
It wasn't $30,000?
He's been taking out loans since 2014. And there's no record what the loans were for.
Did he buy a whole new fire truck for that $235,000?
One interview, there's one interview where he talks about, well, we used it, during this time of the ambulance, we used some of that for payroll. $235,000? Because I've got folks like the fire chief telling me there's no record as to what this money went for. Why did they take out a loan? One of the excuses was, well, we had damage to a roof, so we had to repair the roof. Well, I've also got the checks from the insurance company that paid for the damage. So that doesn't jive. And, oh, by the way, in those...
Okay, let's pause here for just a moment. Okay? Because I'm a little bit confused. The fire chief runs... And you're a fire chief.
Right.
The fire chief runs the actual physical operation.
Operations of, right.
The trustees oversee it.
They
from a
take
taxpayer.
care of the business standpoint.
But,
we take care of operations.
All right, I'm sorry. Why isn't the fire chief looking into this too? He runs the operation. I know it's not technically his duty. I'm sorry, but it's his operation.
I plan on meeting with him hopefully this week because all of these records I just got this week. I don't believe he has seen all the records I just got. I don't think he has seen those, but he
certainly should have been looking at the financials and wondering what the hell's going on.
Well, and he did confront what these loans were for prior to this conviction, and he got a bunch of mumbo jumbo that it was tied. Okay. It was tied to some other loans that they had, but there's no records, and the bank really didn't have any records. Well, here's another rat hole. In order to get a line of credit or a bank loan, the bank should require, you have to have a resolution authorizing, the issuance of that. Mm-hmm. I can't find any minutes where they authorized taking out a loan. So how did you get a loan without a resolution to the bank? Oh, it's just a small town. Everybody knows each other. Banks don't worry about that in small communities. Gosh, Jeannie, your local bank, they know you by face. They're not going to make sure you have all these.
Hell yeah, they are.
You know it and I know it. But in these small communities, I can't tell you how many times John and I have uncovered things being done that violate federal banking laws because it's local folks. My former fire trustee in my fire department took every penny out of the bank. He used to be president. Now, there's a reason he is no longer president of that bank. Yeah. And he took every penny out as a trustee, all on his own, and took it with him to his new job in Marshall, Illinois, to another bank. Well, that's not legal. That's theft. You don't have the power to just take.
But he's in jail too for that.
They wouldn't even investigate it.
Oh God. All right. Okay. Short break again. We'll be right back. This is Jeanne Ives with The Real Story, and the Edgar County Watchdogs are with me.
You're listening to The Real Story with your host, Jeanne Ives.
All right, we're back, and I got to tell you, during the break, Kirk says to me, we could do this for 8 hours straight, tell you stories about the corruption that's going on at the local level. So what else you got? Because we like hearing these stories. As much as we don't like hearing them, we need to hear them.
Well, we've got Orland Fire Protection District.
Oh, wait, another fire protection district.
Yeah.
What are you guys just beating up on fire protection districts?
Well, and that's a great question.
Okay.
When we write an article
Yes.
and people see it, it triggers tips on that type of unit of government.
Good point.
So when we wrote about Oakland Fire District, all of a sudden, boom, we're getting tips about this fire district and that fire district. So if we write about a library, we'll get tons of tips about library corruption.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
Well, we got tipped about certain payments in the Orland Library or Orland Fire District. Library District we did.
Oh, you did the library district already?
10 or 12 years
Okay.
ago.
So now we're on to the fire district in Orland.
The fire district, we ended up finding out they were paying for a DEI consultant.
This story.
They were paying her while she was serving a federal prison sentence in the federal penitentiary. They were still paying her to perform that service.
You can't make that up.
No.
It's so bad.
You know, the people...
So what was she doing? I mean, how does that actually work? You're in prison and you're the DEI consultant for... So she's bringing diversity to Orland Fire Protection District, and she's doing it from prison.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're paying her.
And they're paying her...
Yes.
And the checks are going to...
Going to her while she's in prison.
Well, she probably had a lot of good, credit on her commissary account then.
And then they're paying outrageous fees for media consultants, $400,000 for media consultants.
They're an Orland Fire Protection District. What do they need a media consultant for?
Well, you might need a press release every...
No, what do you need a media consultant
so.
for? $400,000?
They don't need one, but they're still paying them.
Whose brother, sister, nephew, niece who just got out of college and needed a job is doing their media consulting?
Oh, that's Ray Hanania.
Okay. And he's who?
He's still a reporter. He used to work for some of these local Chicago news.
Okay, so he's a
stations.
Chicago connected news guy.
I think he used to write for Sun Times, if I remember right.
Okay, so Ray Henia?
Yeah, he now he's getting about $4,000 a month.
$4,000 a month. He's still getting paid as a media consultant for a fire protection district. What the hell do they put out?
I FOIA'd for his work product, and the fire district secretary said they didn't have any. So I said, why don't you go to Ray and tell Ray to provide it to you? Because under the Freedom of Information Act, if you FOIA something that a third party has, and that third party is under contract with the local government, and it pertains to the government work, they have to go get the information you requested. Just like they have to go to the credit card companies to get the statements if you ask for copies of the statements. Just like one of our first FOIA lawsuits was from our local library district. Or not library, but our local water district. Kirk asked for a copy of a publication for a bid notice in the newspaper. They went to the engineer firm and got a copy and tried to charge him $60-some for that copy.
Well, let's back up. The engineer charged the public body $79 for it.
Yeah.
So the public body tried to pawn that $79 off on me.
And that's a public record, and you can't charge that much for public
And I said, I'm not paying that.
And they're like, come on, you got to pay it. We went and got it for you. It's sitting in their office. I said, oh, so now it's in their possession, really in their possession. I sent a FOIA for that document. They wanted me to pay his bill, so I sued them in Edgar County under the Freedom of Information Act. That was before. It might have been before we actually
incorporated, because we could do pro se lawsuits.
Yeah, now that we're an actual legitimate business, you have to have an attorney to file your lawsuits, which kind of ridiculous.
Fine.
And what was it the judge said to him in that hearing?
I can't remember.
After he looks at everything, the attorney or the judge turns to the attorney and he says, you really need to have a conversation here and turn over those records and he explained the law and educated him and turned to John and says, Mr. Kraft, do you have anything you'd like to add? Well, after the browbeating, the judge just gave the public body. John's like, no, Your Honor, I think you covered it all. And presto, we got the record. But we shouldn't have to sue to get a public record.
Okay, well, we're going to get back to Orland Fire Protection District because there's more to that story that I want to cover. But
with the retirement check?
Yeah, I do want to cover that because I think that's really important as well. But the other thing about this whole thing is not only do the elected officials go through training, but they all have attorneys that should know the law as well. So the public taxpayers should never be paying for a FOIA lawsuit because the attorneys know the law or should know the law. Yes?
Some attorneys will work the law to boost their paychecks to their firms.
Billable hours.
Some attorneys really don't know anything about Open Meetings Act or the Freedom of Information Act, but they signed on to be the attorney for the public body of the
for like DUIs or something
because they're in a little tiny county with 20,000 people and the township with 1,000 people needs an attorney, so they signed on for that. And then you send them a FOIA request that they haven't really gotten ever in the entire existence of the township. Then they don't know what to do.
Well, that's certainly not the case with Orland Fire Protection District. They seem pretty savvy. After all, they hired a DEI consultant who's sitting in prison doing her work, and they have a freaking media consultant that they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to send out a press release every once in a while if you can even find it.
Right.
Okay, you're listening to The Real Story with Jeanne Ives. We've got the Edgar County Watchdogs. We'll be right back.
Now, more of The Real Story with your host, Jeanne Ives.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining me tonight. This is The Real Story with Jeanne Ives, and in studio with me is Kirk Allen and John Kraft, the Edgar County Watchdogs. So now, more recently, Orland Fire Protection District has had another issue.
Well, and we wrote about this issue just to let the voters.
You're going to have to just give the audience a tease because we're
$390,000 departure payment on his retirement.
The Orland Fire Chief.
Yes.
$390,000.
Conversion of sick time and comp time at $130-something an hour that he had banked, and then they paid him off at the end of the year, which raises tons of questions.
And we didn't say anything was wrong with that.
No.
Technically wrong with the payment.
Well, okay, and that's a story, quite frankly, that we covered last week. So if you didn't hear that story last week, I just wanted to bring it up again because we're covering Orland Fire Protection District on other issues. But I did also think that this brings up a good point because we have a Doge Illinois effort here. You can go to dogeillinois.com. That's our webpage on our website, breakthrough-ideas.com, if you're listening, where you can sign up for my weekly emails and you can read all the stuff work that we do. So, but doging, something that needs to be doged, which means it is just a colossal waste of money, or it's an overly generous benefit that they should not have, is completely different than corruption.
Correct.
Right. Yep. They are different, but also it's a different type to me. It's legal corruption. It's immoral. It's like our immorally high property taxes.
And I think in this case, $390,000, and there's all these people are trying to justify one way or the other, but there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. When you bank time, you bank your sick time or your comp time. My question that nobody seems to want to answer.
And you're a fire chief. You should know this. Go ahead.
If I don't get sick time or comp time. I don't get any of that. But let's say I did, and I banked 100 hours of comp time. Mm-hmm. Is that banked at the rate of pay earned when it was banked? Or is it the rate of pay when I decide to retire 20 or 30 or 40 years later? Because in Orland Park, it was banked at the price of retirement. Mm-hmm. When was it earned? Because what happens in this case, it counts towards pensions. And now you have pension spiking. But I believe it should have been paid at the time it was, or it should have been valued. You have this many from year X, It was at this rate. That rate should be locked in, not allowed to continually to grow.
Yeah, so I'm reaching way back to the time when I sat on Wheaton City Council, and one of the things that we did is we had this issue with sick time, especially for the firefighters, but it was all the unions that we were negotiating, but the firefighters are the worst. In fact, the way that you go union negotiations is you typically talk to FOP first because they're the most reasonable, then you talk to 150 who does your maintenance because they're the second worst. Right. And then you talk to the firefighters and say, these two accepted this. This is what you're getting, because the firefighter union is the worst in the frickin' state. They're almost as bad as the teacher unions. Remember, they got the minimum manning bill passed. They get all these special perks, and these guys are the heroes. OK, so I think what you raised is a good question. So you find one thing, you find another thing, whether or not. I mean, that is all actually probably union negotiated at what rate they get the payout.
But
we limited their payout. We limited the number of days that they could do,
and
we did it over time. He's non-union.
The chief position is administrative, managerial.
That's true.
And he's
part
salaried,
of his contract.
and he set his own hours.
Yeah.
So he could set himself up to milk the comp time and sick time.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, I want to thank you. We are completely out of time. This has been a really quick 2-hour segment. It's been very informative. I hope people enjoyed it. And we're going to push this up to our YouTube channel when it's all cut and dried, and you can listen to it there and share it with other people. I want to thank John Kraft and Kirk Allen for your work. You guys are just the best. I love you and I love your work. And thanks a lot for listening tonight. This is Jeanne Ives with The Real Story.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
A strong team builds better, faster, and smarter. And with Buildertrend, your crew has everything they need to do their best work. From scheduling to budgeting to client updates, everyone stays aligned, productive, and in control. No more miscommunication. No more wasted time. Empower your team. Elevate your business. Let's build better together. Schedule your free demo today at buildertrend.com/ownyoursuccess.